Hi everyone and welcome to the Dodo Bird Nerd. It's me, the Dodo Bird Nerd. Now in today's Magic the Gathering video, I'm going to be doing something a bit different than my normal Magic videos. Normally I would do that taxonomy series, but instead, due to the recent release of Commander Legends, I'm going to do a quick deck tech on my favorite commander from the set, that being Gor Muldrak, Amphinologist. So, without any further ado, let's roll the intro and let's get started. So, before I get into the actual deck tech, there's a few things I want to say. Thing one, I haven't actually quite built the deck yet. I'm working on it, so this hasn't been play tested. But this deck should work in terms of what the deck does, I hope. The other thing is what exactly Gor Muldrak does. Gor Muldrak specifically is a 1 in a green and a blue for a 3/2 legendary creature human scout. It gives us and all of our permanents protection from salamanders. At the beginning of your end step, each player who controls the fewest creatures creates a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token. Now that, and we're going to take advantage of both of his abilities. That first one is going to be the first ability we take advantage of, but that second triggered ability is also very helpful for what we want to do in this deck. And the first category, because I'm going to do this in separate categories, is going to be type changers. Basically effects that allow us to change the types of different permanents and creatures our opponents control, so we can basically blank them for as long as we control Gor Muldrak. Now a lot of these cards were in the recent Command Zone episode, so I will link that in the description below. The first set is going to be Amoeboid Changeling, Imagecrafter, and Mistform Mutant. All of these creatures have an activated ability that basically allow us to either specifically turn it into a salamander only in the case of Imagecrafter or in Mistform Mutant, or in the case of Amoeboid Changeling, changing it to all of the creature types, which does include salamander, which is the main thing we care about for this deck anyway. Another set of type changers includes Standardize, which is a global type change effect, which we can definitely take advantage of with some of our effects that help us win the game later on, and Arcane Adaptation and Xenograft, which are basically the same thing. Arcane Adaptation is a bit cheaper and does a bit more, but they basically turn all of our boards into salamanders. Now, that might seem a bit weird, but the next section will make that a bit more self-explanatory as to why we want to run those two cards in this deck. The last type changer is going to be Unnatural Selection, one of the better ones. It's an enchantment, so it's a bit more protected. It's also only 1 generic mana to activate, so it's not a tap ability and doesn't cost 2. So we can do it a lot easier and a lot more often than those previous effects. So it's basically one of the best cards in the deck. Our next category is going to be giving stuff away. We don't want to hold on to those Arcane Adaptations and Xenographs. We want to give them to everyone else, so we can effectively blank their board for as long as we control Gor Muldrak, which is pretty good. These include Daring Thief, which has an inspired trigger to exchange control of non-land permanents to share a type. So we can take our Arcane Adaptation or Xenograft and switch it with their enchantment, which is very good for us. Shifting Loyalties is a one-off effect of that same thing as Daring Thief, and Puka's Mischief allows us to exchange control on the beginning of each upkeep if we feel like it, with a permanent we control to a non-land permanent with a lesser or equal converted mana cost that an opponent controls. Now, this, more likely than not, if you need to, can always target a Salamander token that's created by our commander. However, this can also target something a bit more valuable that we may want, say a Soul Ring, for example, which is pretty good. The next category is going to be copying things. Now this includes copying our commander, or copying those 2 enchantments, the Arcane Adaptation or Xenograft, which are 2 very important enchantments to the deck. The first one is going to be Clever Impersonator, which can just enter as a copy of any non-land permanent in play, so this can even be an Arcane Adaptation we've already given away, which is pretty good. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, a new card from Commander Legends, can enter as a copy of our commander, and makes the legend rule no longer apply, so our Clever Impersonator can then enter as a copy of Gor Muldrak if we feel like it. And then Sakashima's Protege can enter as any permanent enter to the battlefield that turn, so we can drop out either Arcane Adaptation or Xenograft, and then we can drop out Sakashima's Protege. Or, more likely, we will cascade into those off of Sakashima's Protege's trigger, and then immediately have it enter as a copy of that card. Either way, it works for the effect. It just requires a bit more mana if we haven't exactly cast the Arcane Adaptation or Xenographed yet. More ways to copy things include Helm of the Host, which gets us a copy of Gor Muldrak on every single turn, which is pretty good because we want everyone to have salamanders is the basic goal of the deck. And Estrid's Invocation and Mirror Maid can also enter as any copy of enchantment, though Estrid's Invocation has to be one we control. Mirror Maid can be anything, which basically Estrid's Invocation would have to be something that we haven't given away yet. Mirror Maid would have to be something anything really. We can copy our Arcane Adaptations or Xenographs, and then we can give them away, which is the basic goal, one of the basic goals of the deck. The next thing is going to be token generation. Our commander is already making a lot of tokens, so we want to find ways to make even more tokens than what our commander is already doing. Now these include stuff like Full Flowering, which for XX and green is a sorcery, populate X times, so we can make a bunch of salamander tokens if we need a mana sink. Selesnya Eulogist is a centaur druid, and for 2 and a green, we can exile creature cards from graveyards and then populate, similar to Full Flowering. This also gives us a bit of graveyard hate, which is honestly pretty good to have in Commander. Second Harvest is 2 green for an instant. We can basically double all of our tokens, whether that be Gor Muldrak from Helm of the Host, or 4/3 salamanders that Gor Muldrak helped create. Lastly, we have Birthing Boughs, which for 3 mana for yet an artifact, you can pay 4 and tap it to make a 2/2 colorless shapeshifter with Changeling. Basically, it's 4 and tap, make a salamander token in this deck for all intents and purposes. Our next category is going to be tri-members, and yes, this is technically a tribal deck, so I am running a good chunk of the salamanders in the color combination. I think I'm running all except for one of them. The first set of 3 is going to be Amphin Mutineer, which is for 3 and a blue, you get a 3/3 salamander pirate. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-salamander creature, and that creature's controller makes a 4/3 salamander warder creature token, the same token made by Gor Muldrak. And it can encore out for 4 blue if it's in our bin. Now, 1, this acts as creature removal and exile-based creature removal, which is really good, and it gives them salamander creatures, which with our commander basically means they can't touch us as long as we have Gor Muldrak out. Amphin Cutthroat's a 3 and a blue for a 2/4 vanilla creature. I'm really just running it because it's a salamander. And that's about it, really. And lastly, we have Amphin Pathmage, which for 3 and a blue, you get a 3/2 salamander wizard, and for 2 and a blue, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Now, with our commander out, this doesn't really work, as he's a salamander, so he can't actually target our own creatures. However, this can be used as a political tool in terms of basically allowing people to attack what they normally couldn't. Or if worst comes to worst and we really need to target our own creature, we can always use Amoeboid Changeling and cause it to lose the salamander type until end of turn if we're really desperate. Also, those 2 Amphin both have Gor Muldrak in their flavor text, which is cool. Our last 3 salamanders, because there's only like 7, and one of them is really, really bad. We have Fin-Clade Fugitives, which is for 5 and a green, you get a 7/4 Elf Salamander Rogue. It's a weird looking salamander, but it's a salamander, and you can encore it for 4 and a green, similar to Amphin Mutineer. Gudul Lurker is a 1 mana 1/1, can't be blocked, and has Megamorph for 1 blue to flip it back. Basically, with some of the other cards we're running later, this can be a very dangerous threat with Unblockable, which is massive in this deck as we're trying to basically win through combat. Basically, after our opponent's creatures can't do anything to us or block, we can swing in. And lastly, we have Pteramander, which is for just 1 blue. You get a 1/1 Salamander Drake with flying, and you can pay 7 and a blue to adapt 4, giving it 4 counters. However, if we have any instant sorceries in our graveyard, it will be cheaper. Just another flying tribe member, really. The next thing is going to be Encouraging Combat. Now, this deck can really work with the Encouraging Combat angle, as we're not going to be hit by most of their salamander creatures, while some of their other creatures might present a problem. As long as they're only attacking with salamanders, that's fine for us. They can't do anything to us. So that's really good. Our first thing is going to be Angler Turtle, just forcing everything to attack. It's a 5 blue for 5/7 turtle, has hexproof, and creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able. Ideally, they're not attacking us, and if they are attacking us, it's going to be smaller things that our salamanders can block. Next, we have Edric, which for 1 green and blue, you get a 2/2 elf rogue, and if a creature deals combat damage to one of my opponents, its controller draws a card. Again, incentivizing them to hit not me if I'm playing the deck. Coat of Arms is just really dumb with Gor Muldrak, as each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. You're making at least one salamander a turn, which means each other salamander on the field is going to get at least +1 at the end of each of your turns, if not more, which is really good, especially when they can't hurt you. And lastly, we have Muraganda Petroglyphs, which is an enchantment, and creatures with no abilities get +2/+2. All of those tokens you're making have no abilities. With that out, they basically are making 6/5s at the end of each of your turn instead of 4/3s, which is a really good effect, especially, again, when they can't hurt you, which is basically the intrinsic reason for why Coat of Arms and Muraganda Petroglyphs are in the deck. They're pumping your opponent's creatures as well, but they can't hurt you as long as you have out your commander. As mentioned previously, having your commander out is very important for this deck to not just die against an army of salamanders it made. Then, of course, you're playing a game of commander, you're probably going to try to want to win the game at some point, and this deck does have a few ways to help the player do it. The first is something like Caller of the Hunt. For 2 and a green, you get a creature, choose a creature type when it enters, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures in play of the chosen type. Obviously, you're going to name Salamander off of it, and if all or most of your opponent's creatures are salamanders, they're going to have a really tough time blocking this gigantic creature. Keeper of Keys is also there. It gives us the Monarch, which is a very fun mechanic to have, and if we manage to keep the Monarch, which is easier when their creatures can't hurt us, all of our creatures are unblockable, which allows us to swing in, assuming we can't already with stuff that's already out. Metallic Mimic can technically be another tribal member, assuming we name salamanders, and makes our salamanders slightly bigger than everyone else's by giving them a counter when they enter, which can help us get some damage through. Tribal Unity is X 2 and a green. For an instant, creatures of the creature type of your choice get +X/+X until end turn. You're naming salamanders and make them all gigantically large, so, that's fun. Peer Pressure is really good, especially if you manage to make everything else a salamander, and we control the most amount of creatures, because then it basically reads 3 and a blue for sorcery, gain control of every creature on the board, which is pretty good way to win the game, I would have to say. And then we have Obelisk of Urd for 6 mana and artifact. You can invoke it out if you want. Name a creature type, and it gives all the creatures you control the chosen type +2/+2. You're obviously going to name salamanders, and again, makes your salamanders slightly bigger than everyone else's. Lastly, we have 2 fun cards I thought I would mention. Those are a Psionic Resonator, which is a 2 mana artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it to copy a triggered ability you control. You can choose new targets for the ability, for the copy. Basically, this is going to copy Gor Muldrak's end step ability. And lastly, Sakashima's Will is 3 and a blue for sorcery, and if you choose one, if you use commander, choose both. Target opponent chooses a creature you control, you gain control of it. More likely than not, they're giving you a salamander, and then you can turn your entire board into salamanders if you want, and you have the pump effect to just destroy your opponents with your tribal effects, if you feel like it. Any remaining cards would be 10 ramp, 15 card draw, response, or other spells like a Beastmaster Ascension or a Bounty of the Luxa, and then 36 lands. I'm leaving these kind of vague, as basically what you want to run in these categories can vary from player to player. It doesn't really affect the main synergies in the deck. So, what do you think of my Gor Muldrak Amphinologist weird group hug salamander tribal deck tech? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll probably be doing another deck tech around Kaldheim, so let me know if there's any format changes you want to make for that. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!